Welcome to Loom Knit Lab. In today's episode, we are going to learn how to make the Faux woven cowl. For this project, we are going to be using our all-in-one knitting loom, a knitting tool, and super bulky weight yarn. I am using Malabrigo Rasta, which is a nice thick yarn. Let's get started. To begin, the pattern calls to cast on 24 stitches. For the demonstration, I am going to cast on 12 stitches. First, let's start with a slip knot. There's our slip knot. Our first row calls to be from left to right. Therefore, for my cast on, I am going to start from right to left. For my cast on, I'm going to be using the yarn over cast on, placing that slip knot on 2 pegs. Tightening the slip knot, then I'm going to E-wrap those 2 pegs, or 1 peg, 1 stitch, and lifting it over. I'm going to repeat that for 12 stitches. I'm going to bring the yarn, E-wrap the next stitch. Remember, I am using 2 pegs as one. Yarn over, continuing in this method of E-wrapping each stitch twice, lifting the bottom over the top, creating the yarn over cast on. Continue until you have 12 stitches on your knitting loom. I have completed casting on. Again, I have 12 pegs. I'm only demonstrating with half the stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stitches. Now I'm ready for my first row. We are ready for our first row. The first row says to knit 1. So we're going to knit the peg. And then it says to yarn over around the peg. So I'm going to simply E-wrap. I'm going to take my working yarn and E-wrap that stitch. And I'm going to leave that E-wrap there. Then I'm gonna again knit the next peg, and then I'm going to E-wrap that stitch, bring it to the front, knitting the next peg, and then yarn over. Perfect. Yarn over. Continue in this method all the way to the end of the row. I am finishing wrapping that last one. Now, for the last one, you just knit it. And on this one, you do not yarn over, because if you do yarn over, the yarn will just fall off anyway. So we are ready now for the following row, for row number 2. Row number 2 says to, first we're going to knit the first 3 pegs. So for this we're going to elongate the stitch. So since over here we don't have a yarn over, we don't need to do anything to it. I'm going to grab the yarn over from that one, elongate the stitch, grab the yarn over from the third one, elongate the stitch. Now we have 3 long stitches. We are going to knit those 3 stitches as we normally would. So bring the working yarn to the front. 1, 2, knit the third one. Perfect. And then the instructions have us start the cable. The cable will take place over 6 pegs, so it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first for this cable that we're doing right now, the C6F, we are going to skip the first 3 pegs. I'm gonna take the working yarn towards the back of those 3 pegs. Then we're gonna knit peg 4, peg 5, and peg 6. Before we do that, we are going to drop the yarn overs. So here we have dropped the yarn overs. Now you can elongate them. There. Now we're gonna knit those. So there's 4, 5. When the stitches are this long, you can just simply use your fingers to put them down. It makes it easier, at least for me, to go to the inside of the loom and tug on the stitches, and then I don't have big loops in the front. Now once I've done that, my instructions say to place those 3 stitches on a cable needle. I have this stitch holder that I like to use for this purpose, and you're simply going to grab this stitch from peg 6, put it on the stitch holder, stitch from peg 5, and lastly stitch from peg 4. Perfect. Now the rest of the instructions, we need to take care of those first 3 pegs. So first we're gonna elongate the stitch. So drop the yarn overs on those 3 pegs. Once we drop them, you can elongate them. Perfect. Now that working yarn, see those 3 stitches? They're right there on the stitch holder. That working yarn comes to the front of those 3 stitches, and then behind the pegs, and then to the front of the first peg. Again, let's do that one more time. The working yarn is coming from peg number 6, from stitch number 6. You're gonna grab it and bring it behind the pegs, behind peg 3, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And now we're going to knit peg 1, peg 2, and peg 3. Now this next step may take a little bit of maneuvering. We are going to move the stitch from peg 3 over to peg 6. Then the stitch from peg 2 over to peg 5. The stitch from peg 1 over to peg 4. You do it step by step. So grab stitch from peg number 3, and you're gonna elongate it over to peg 6. Perfect. Now the stitch from peg number 2. Make sure your other one, your neighbor peg, doesn't lose his peg. This stitch number 2 over to 5. This is where the elongated stitches make this so much easier. And then this one to peg 4. There we go. And now we have emptied peg 1, peg 2, and peg 3. We are going to place the stitches that are on our stitch holder on those 3 empty pegs. The stitch that was on peg 6 goes on peg 3. The stitch that was on peg 5 goes on peg 2. The stitch that was on peg 4 goes on peg 1. So let's go ahead and do that. I slide one off, and then I place it on my first peg. Then I slide the next one off. Try to catch it before you take it out of your stitch holder. There it is. Now place it on the second peg, And lastly, the last stitch right there, that one goes on that last third empty peg. Perfect. Now that we have them there, your working yarn is by peg 6. You are ready to continue with the rest of the instructions, which simply read to knit the last 3 stitches. Before we knit them, we gotta drop the yarn overs. There's 1, 2, and 3. Now we knit them. 1, 2, and 3. Oh, let's not lose that stitch. And 3. There we go. Again, go to the inside of the loom and tug on those elongated stitches so they don't pop off. Here we have, that was row number 2. Now we're ready for row number 3, which is exactly the same as row number 1, where you knit that that peg, and then you E-wrap it. Perfect. Then knit the next one, and then you E-wrap it. Knit the next one and E-wrap it. Continue in this form all the way to the end of the row, and then I will show you how to do row number 4.